Good. Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Budget Advisory Board's budget review session. This is one of three that we do this month. And each meeting for the next 3 Wednesdays, we'll bring 3 different departments in. Each department is allowed 20 minutes to a budget presentation of what they will have submitted to the city manager and to the Office of Budget and Finance. So I would ask that before we do anything, we do a roll call.
Mr. Bell, Ms. Belker,
Here.
Mr. Kale,
Here.
Mr. Camerata,
Present.
Mr. DiGirolamo, Ms. Jones Smith, Ms. Lowe, Ms. Milroy, here, Mr. Patel,
Yep.
and Chair Brown.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. This is, as I mentioned, one of 3 meetings. It does not officially count towards your attendance record. Since it's not a regular meeting, which we will have on the 21st, regular meeting, I believe, yes. So any ideas or recommendations? We can't take official action on them since it's not an official meeting. I would ask you to just take notes. If you do have any recommendations that we need to discuss at that meeting, be placed to take official action on. I would ask also that we allow each of the presenters of the department chairs or the acting chairs to allow them to go through their presentation, hold questions till the end, because we're on a tight time schedule. We have a full agenda tonight to get all through three of them, plus the CRA presentation. And there has been if we have time permitting, to slip in a board presentation that was created by Oliver Kale based on the workshop, and it's a 10-point slide that he has put together. My understanding that it's based on the conversation of the workshop with the commission and the budget advisory board. So with that, is there anything else that I've not covered? Get started.
So do you want to talk about the timer?
Yeah, so one thing to note, the directors, and I think I shared this last time, the directors have asked to make sure that they're able to support their colleagues and also having enough time, if we could use a timer for 20 minutes for their portion. So there's going to be a digital timer that will be on the screen, which will give people an idea of when their time will be over. If it gets distracting, let us know and we'll, pivot throughout the time, but directors will have 20 minutes and then we'll open the floor to you all for your questions and answers. HR is going to be our first presenter for tonight. Yes, Jerome. So we'll.
Yeah, that's cheering.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do they have to go 20 minutes?
No.
Okay, good. Just wanted to know. That's what. Linda, I already know.
Yeah, I don't need 20
Maybe
minutes.
last night.
And with that, we will start the timer for Jerome.
Ready, begin. I will not be taking the full 20 minutes, I can guarantee you. Last month, we went over at a very high level what human resources does. We went through all the functions, so I'm not gonna repeat all that for you. I do understand that you have received our packets, the budget submissions already. So just a quick reminder, the recruitment, onboarding, classification, comp, training and development, benefits administration, employee and labor relations, risk management and security are all under our umbrella. We discussed what keeps me up at night, largely the ability to recruit and retain. And that, in that vein, told you that I was going to be asking for a classification and compensation study. I will follow through with that tonight. The ability to address the needs for our employees, proper service, particularly with the FMLA or Family Medical Leave Administration, and pension plan assistance. So we have a decision package for that as well. And then training issues, including cybersecurity, joining forces with Angela Marinas and the IT folks, active shooter training, providing security for our employees, and compliance training tied to the city's values. Let's talk about decision packages related to each. The class and comp study, as you can see, the submission is asking for $125,000. We have done a bit of study. We've looked around and gotten some informal bids. We believe we can conduct a a comprehensive study, probably doing benchmarking for 125 or maybe slightly less. I want to remind you that the last one was done in 2017. It was implemented in 2018, so the data is already 8 years old. The lifespan of a class and comp study is generally about 5 years. So we're overdue. We do consistently have to hire people above the minimum of the pay ranges and frequently above the midpoint, which requires some approval processes. We're having trouble with internal equity issues because of that. We keep hiring people at higher salaries. And then taking into consideration where people already are in those classifications. Conversion of the part-time FMLA to administrator to full-time is a second decision package. This is currently a 3/4 position. When we call it part-time, it's not a half. It is currently a 3/4 position. And we are requesting that once again, because the number of requests for FMLA have only abated slightly since the pandemic years of 21 and 22. This position actually investigates and ensures the qualifications are met and obtains all the required documentation, timely responses to sensitive and confidential matters for our employees. This position has also taken on the new duties of administering the parental leave benefit that was instituted in January 1st of this year. Starting with the non-union employees, we are looking at potentially bargaining it with the other units, starting with Teamsters and Federation, as we enter into bargaining as we speak, as a matter of fact. Third decision package is transitioning of the training specialist in risk management to professional services. This is actually a reduction in our force. We are actually offering up one position to be reduced from the FTE count. It is currently costed out at $130,000. We are looking at giving up 80,000 of that and retaining 50,000 to transfer to professional services to pay for the training for outside trainers for active shooter training. And after some work trying to recruit this position, we've determined or found that the best practice in the industry now is not to do on-site interactive training. That is not in the best interest of the employees, has been determined by the professionals. It is just plain too traumatic. More academic training is appropriate, and there are plenty of outside sources that can provide that service for us for the $50,000. Fourth is the additional part-time retirement specialist. I think I explained to you in the last meeting that with the introduction of our new HRIS system, Infor, the responsibility for a lot of the retirement benefits was transferred from the payroll department to human resources. And the benefits staff does not have the background or the particular training to administer a lot of those pension benefits. Also, with the advent of the FRS system back in 2021, we've had considerable number of employees transfer at that time into FRS. Everybody that is hired in after that date as well is mandatorily going into FRS. We need somebody who can actually administer the FRS program in a much more efficient manner, making sure that all the documents are correct, that we're sending information timely to the state. In particular, I think we mentioned that we have an issue with part-time or temporary employees under FRS guidelines are not eligible for FRS until they've been with us for 6 months or more. If that position goes over 6 months, which it frequently does, we need somebody to track and make sure that that person actually goes into FRS, the contributions are made timely. We have run into issues where the contributions were not made timely because of that, and therefore the city incurred some penalty payments to the state as well. We do have workload issues among the benefits staff, trying to train people to do that specific function, in particular because the FRS system is not the only system that they are being asked to handle or administer. We frequently get employees who want to retire, come in and ask about their defined contribution plans as well. We have two administrators, that's Mission Square and Nationwide. And unfortunately, there is no one-stop shop for any of this. We're looking to provide a much better service for our employees, more educated, information being provided to them, with a part-time person, in that decision package. What questions do you have? I'm at 13 minutes.
Yeah, I'll just start on that side of the room.
I have a couple of quick questions.
Yes, sir.
One is, how is your sign-on bonus program?
That we got a report from the chief of police in the last meeting and that it is working very well. It is actually being funded from salary savings, from vacant positions. But he has been able to recruit a number of officers using that program.
So it is definitely attracting
It
people.
is something that we can use in our toolbox, yes.
The other question I have is that the classification and compensation study you talked about,
Yes, sir.
generally speaking, especially this is 8 years old, going in, the ranges are going to be much higher. Midpoint is going to be much higher than today's ranges. So what do you do? I mean, how do you adjust?
Well, in the last round, when we did a class comp study, it was just before I started working for the city. But typically when you do a class and comp study and people are already within the range, you don't necessarily adjust them if they're within that range. There may be some equity issues that you have to look at, but actually you're just looking at the starting rate and the max rate. And that will, in most cases, provide opportunity for employees, particularly if they're at the max rate already, for more wage growth.
One last question. How do you lower driver caused crashes? I read in your
Oh,
thing
good
that-
question, good question. We've had our folks at Risk Management working on that. A couple of years ago, we instituted a program called Samsara, and it's put cameras in the vehicles to help us understand how these accidents are occurring and what we can do to help prevent them, whether there's distracted driving or in a number of cases, recognizing that it wasn't our driver's fault at all. It was the fault of the other driver. We've been able to use that for verification of actual facts surrounding the accidents. We've also instituted a number of training programs, and we've tightened up our disciplinary process related to preventable accidents. So we bargained into the Teamsters contract in the last round, the ability to I should say, a more efficient way of issuing discipline in a constructive manner for employees who have experienced a preventable accident. And it requires training, retraining, if discipline is involved as well.
Thank you.
Down.
Good.
Yeah, Ross.
Good, thank you.
That was great, Jerome. So net, if you're not asking, you're deleting, I guess you're moving someone to professional services, you're getting, deleting a position and asking for a full-time versus a part-time.
If you're asking about the the net
That
FTE count, it would be to eliminate one full position in risk under training specialist. But it would be adding a 1/4 position to the 3/4 already for the FMLA. And then a 1/2 position. So ultimately net, we're still down 1/4 position.
Okay.
If my math is right.
No, I don't have any other questions.
I think. Compensation study, what is the scope? Are you benchmarking other cities in Florida, across the nation, private sector?
It would generally be our geographic area, meaning the state and employers our size. And for benchmarking positions, we'll be looking at pretty much a lot of the hard to fill positions in skilled trades, some in management, some in developmental services, inspectors, et cetera. And then the director levels as well, because we realize that we're somewhat low there.
And what was the cost of the last comprehensive study? You announcing a 125K for this one?
Yeah,
How much was it in 2007?
I have to tell you, I believe it was well over $500,000. Am I right, Laura?
I think it was closer to 700,000 with the chamber.
However,
Deflation, huh?
But why such a
Deflation.
discrepancy?
quite honestly, the only thing, my staff has been looking into the costs of such a survey, et cetera, and what other cities are paying in terms of a study. And I hate to say that the city overpaid for that study, but we overpaid to some degree. I don't know to what extent because I wasn't here, so I don't know to what level they got into the details and how many positions they studied and to what degree they got into the actual job duties, job descriptions,
So
et
the
cetera.
in-depth and maybe the
So-
scope was different.
It just seemed, exactly.
Can I go, sorry, back to what you just asked, because you mentioned the size of the city is what the comps were, but if you also look at look, we could be the same size as, Omaha or whatever, but the cost of living is way different in some of the similar type cities than here, so I'm just
No,
curious. if you also-
it would be primarily restricted to the state of Florida.
I don't have any questions, but other than to point out, as you went down, looking at your decision package form, you have number one priority, number two, and then the third as a one, the fourth.
Because they're all important.
It's because they're in different funds,
Yep.
yeah.
What's that?
So we rank each fund separately, so you'll get one through whatever in the general fund, and then it starts over again at one when it's entering into a new fund.
Okay,
So because risk has its own funds, they get their own priority listing as well.
okay, thank you for that clarification.
Very good, that's it. 20 minutes.
Good job, Jerome.
Great job.
Linda can do it for under.
I'm gonna do it in 10. Is there a game where you say?
Aim that too. IT is not cumulative, okay?
Yeah, I'm gonna give IT my time. I'm gonna give some time to her. She will need it.
Lucky you.
Yes, thank you.
And quickly, for the board's, I want to thank you on behalf of the board, for the job that you've done this past year, and your team with the recruitment process, selection, city manager, now the city attorney. I know those are time consuming that normally not in your scope of work throughout the year. This year's been very fast and challenging.
Thank you very much.
Linda.
All right, hi, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today to present the finance department's budget. Last time we met, we talked about the things that kept me up at night. They still keep me up, keep me up at night. So what I wanna focus on, finance is very vanilla. We are, we don't have a lot of fluff in the budget, we don't have a lot to cut, but we do have a lot to do. One of the major challenges we had this year in the last 2 fiscal years was when we onboarded our new ERP system, the volume of work that came from that. So our decision packages this year are mainly focused on how to get the volume of work that's now being assumed by finance that wasn't assumed before with the old system, how we can keep up with it, and if we have the staffing we need to help us analyze, review, and post these transactions, it will help us be timelier with our financial reporting, which is our goal this year. I don't know if many of you guys know, we had a challenge with last year's audit, and we didn't actually issue our financial reports until October of 2024 is when we issued our 2023 financial report. We are in better standing this year, partially because of some issues with the ERP, but what we recognize is that we went from a system where we would get summary reports and post it to actually getting every transaction live coming into the system. Every bank hit, every credit card hit are all individual transactions. Every $4 parking meter charge from this is a live transaction into our system. So there's the volume of work has increased for the team that has to review and post, reconcile and get it in so we can get timely with our reporting.
So that's gonna be our primary focus with this upcoming year, is to get the staffing we need in to help with those volume of transactions, so we can get back to more timely reporting and be ahead of reporting. So that, you know, the whole thing with implementing this new ERP was that we can have real-time information quicker. And we have not really been able to realize that because it's just so much of the data coming in. So let me go into our decision packages. The first thing that we're asking for, well, first of all, I got some questions from the BAB, and they were great questions, because they made me go out and take a look at another agency and how they compare to the city of Fort Lauderdale. And I can tell you, looking at that, I see the holes in where Fort Lauderdale's finance department needs help. And actually, the focus that I have this year is on those holes in all actuality. So the first thing we're asking for is an accountant. The accounting and financial reporting unit, who does the bulk of the heavy lift with paying every single bill that comes in, reconciling every transaction that comes in, processes all the capital assets. We have $1 billion capital CIP budget. All those assets, when they come online, have to be accounted for by that unit and processed and recorded and depreciated against. So when you look at the volume of work in my decision package, we talk about numbers, the large capital projects budget, the large amount of transactions coming in. So to help with the reconciling, posting, and trying to get more timely with these transactions, we're asking for an accountant. And this accountant will be assisting the accounting and financial reporting team with reviewing all the bank transactions, with, you know, ensuring that the volume of transactions are reviewed more timely, and helping to build in some redundancies with our other teams that's really stressed with the amount of work. As you can tell, we issued, the budget itself has doubled, and the team that has to record those transactions have not. So this is to try and right-size that and provide some relief to them and provide them some time to actually get back on track. And so that's our first thing. And this will help us, one, like I said, be more timely, two, help us to reconcile, post, and like I said, issue financial statements quicker. So it's our first ask. The second ask is gonna be for our accounts payable team. And our accounts payable team, as you guys know, we had a fraud event about 1.5 years ago. And it came from the volume, like I said, it comes back to volume again. AP has everything that goes through that we have to pay for the city comes through accounts payable. They have a large portfolio that they have to manage, and really 4 staff members with the supervisor. The supervisor is actually doing work instead of reviewing. And with her doing instead of reviewing, it's hard for her to double check that the staff is doing things correctly and supervising the work. So we're looking for another clerical position to go in there and help with those transactions, so the supervisor can actually supervise, review, and approve things instead of being a person actually entering the work. And the last ask that I have this year is for a P-card program audit. Our P-card program is over $70 million. And we have an internal staff member who tries to review those transactions. We're actually undergoing an internal audit from the city auditor's office with our P-card program. But with a P-card program that large, it really lends itself to transactions that could end up being fraudulent because we don't have the time to review it. So having a third party review it just makes the program more sound and ensure that compliance with our procurement rules and our P-card policies are being met, and, you know, takes another view of it instead of just internal staff doing the review. And we have a decision package for that. You know, as I was preparing this budget for the city manager's office and for you guys, I was asked to see if there's something in our operations that we can do as a cost savings measure. And after we prepared the budget packets, I thought of something. I shared it with the city manager, so I will share it with you. One of the things we did years ago is we had part of our investment portfolio, the short-term portion of it, we had it in-house managed. And when we manage it in-house, we would buy treasuries, which is very simple to buy, and manage it in-house and save on advisory fees. We had switched to a fully outsourced model. But if we decide to switch back to an in-house model, which we have the capacity to do if I have help to take some of that workload off, we can save the city about $110,000 a year in advisor fees that we pay just to manage treasuries. And if anybody who knows the investment market, treasuries are so easy to buy, and that's something that we can manage in-house ourselves, and we're willing to take that on to save the city $110,000. That's my presentation. Any questions?
You're a minute. Yours. Okay, we'll go around the table, starting with.
My question is, are there any outreach programs that you offer to the youth? And I know this is probably more human resources, but we're coming into summer. I know that usually the county, I think, used to have some kind of summer employment program. So I was wondering, does the city of Fort Lauderdale offer that? And the reason why I'm asking is because I was concerned about the engagement of the youth. Just knowing what opportunities, we are always talking about engaging the community. It starts with some of the children as well, so.
So I will chime in a little bit and I'll let Jerome finish the rest. We do a summer program that's sponsored by CareerSource.
CareerSource, Robert, it's Summer Youth Employment, SYEP. We've done it for quite a few years now, and we're engaged already this year. We polled the department directors to see who can take how many students. And we usually get a very good cooperative effort, particularly in Parks and Recreation and Public Works. But it gives the youth some taste of public employment and what work is actually done around the city. Besides all the positions that everybody knows about, police and fire, but they see all the other positions and the other work that the city does.
I can tell you finance usually gets about 2 volunteers or 2 summer youth, 2 to 3 every year. So
We always
we
take
always
advantage
take advantage of that program for sure. And they help out with the P-card program a little bit, just reviewing receipts in the system, but they can't really,
Right,
they just
yeah.
look at it and make sure something's attached, but they do add value to us and we do utilize them, absolutely.
That's good
Yes.
to hear.
I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
After you started instituting processing fees to use credit cards to pay the bills,
Yes.
have the credit card usage gone away?
Credit card usage has not gone away. People still use it. I mean, they balk about the fee, but they still use it.
So it's not really gone down, they're not shifting to ACH or something?
No, I haven't seen a big climb to that, no.
Wow. We need to eat that money.
They will do that, yeah.
The other question is not exactly related to the budget, but it's your area. What's the formula for allocating the principal and interest payment on the bond? Once you issue a bond,
Okay,
and you have the P&I on your tax bill.
yeah.
How is it determined? I mean,
It's determined, when you issue the bond books, it gives you the CUSIP for every bond. And the amount that you pay is based upon the upcoming debt service.
no, I
schedule.
don't, no, I didn't.
So we mean allocate.
I know what the P&I
Oh,
would be,
sorry.
but let's say, is it done by the number of housing units divided? And what
So for the GO bonds, it is for the entire city, so it's based upon your property value and we estimate
what
the
is the
amount.
property value?
It is based on property value.
Okay, that
And the
was-
amount you get charged on your debt millage is based upon what we need to collect. So if we need $20 million for that debt service, it will basically, whatever the millage is that's needed to get $20 million based upon the property value is what we'd use.
And then more condos, more buildings are coming up, does it go down?
It-
You know?
The P&I doesn't go down, but what will go down is how much you would pay,
That's what I
because
meant,
yes,
yeah.
what the resident would pay, the more units that come online and that are assessed a property tax will also be assessed this fee as well.
Thank you.
Mhm.
We're not going around the room. I'll go ahead and chime
Yeah,
in.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
There's a couple of things regarding staff, but then you brought up the advisor fees and assuming that you could bring on, how much money are we talking about in treasuries?
We have over Laura Garcia, our acting treasurer is here. I think it's
Ballpark, doesn't
I
matter.
think it was over 200 million in treasuries we have.
So, if you were to bring that in-house, how do you purchase, who purchases the treasuries?
That we do it, we have a custodial account. And we were doing it before, the custodial account is still there, so it would just be to transfer those assets to our self-directed custodial account. And when the treasuries are mature, we would just go out to the website and get the next treasury and ladder it out.
So just to let you know, there's different prices for retail and advisory. You're paying an advisor fee for that. I also noticed that there was an increase in performance. I think it was 55 basis points, and then you came on your question saying, well, it depends on the market performance. But if you bring those treasuries in-house, you're not moving those bonds in and out. You're not buying and selling like they are.
Right, we're holding till they mature,
So
and
then
when
why
they
don't you
mature.
just do that anyway? Why are we playing around with the bond market?
So the investment strategy changed. We had an in-house investment program. The strategy changed to outsource it. And so it's a fully
But you can
outsourced
still,
investment.
but you can still do that while it's outsourced. You can still own a laddered portfolio and not mess with them.
I
Just let
got
them
you.
mature.
I'm just saying the direction at that point in time was to fully outsource the investment portfolio, and I'm bringing it back in-house now. That's my suggestion. So.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just a shift in
I think that should be looked
the
at a little
process.
bit more.
You know that how I feel about the bonds.
Absolutely.
We're able to keep that profit
I know.
versus the bond money that sits there.
Yeah, on the general fund.
General fund,
Yeah,
you
on
keep
the,
that
on
money.
the, on the.
Has there been an RFP process, or is it just gonna be a decision? How does that decision get made?
I'm sorry, with RFP process for the.
Request for proposal or,
For the custodial is already in-house. I don't have to get a request for proposal to buy treasuries. I would just go to
no,
that.
request for the advisor. You did one originally to hire someone.
We did, and so we do have a current contract in place. It's with PFM Asset Management. And so when that's up for renewal, we would either do a new RFP or piggyback off of an established agreement if there's one available.
And you're asking for more help and so that we can manage all of the transactions for the P card business. Or at least keep them,
To audit it.
to keep them audited. Are we seeing a lot of fraud besides that one time? Are we losing money?
I see, so this is the difference. My team who reviews it, when a department buys something, I don't know. One of the findings from the last P card audit was the amount of sand that the person bought was enough to build a large mound. Finance staff does not know how much sand a department needs to buy. So that's not something we can analyze for fraud. So we need somebody else with a more expertise. We just look and see, did you buy it? Did the person sign off? Is it, is it in compliance with the rules? But we don't know enough about how the end user departments work to know if you're buying in
Sure.
excess
Makes sense.
of one
It's not
particular
just
item.
dollars and cents.
It's not just that. So that's where the fraud comes in.
Got
It's by the excess of something, and because
Stays
we're
in
not in
control.
operations, we don't know, right?
And the amount of money, as Prabhuling had just mentioned, the fee that we're charging those to use the credit card now,
Mhm.
do we know how much that's bringing in?
It's not bringing in anything because there's no cost to the city. The
Okay,
city,
so how much is the city not paying anymore?
the city was paying $1.8 million in
So
credit
it's an
card fees.
additional 1.8 million.
So we're saving that
Saving.
throughout the city, yes, through all funds,
We're not
not just
spending.
general fund, yeah. The biggest one was the water and sewer fund that was paying because they have $100 million revenue stream.
But I thought you
But-
said people are not changing over to ACH.
They're not changing over to ACH, they're paying the fee, but the fee does not come to the city. The fee goes to the credit card
Right.
provider who's assuming
Yeah,
the
but we're
risk.
not paying it anymore.
Right, we're
So
not,
we have an extra $2 million sitting there.
No, he said,
citywide,
what he said is that the credit card usage has not gone down.
Correct.
right.
Which means we're saving more money.
You realize savings in the funds for it,
Okay.
parking fund. I don't think all funds are switched over. We still have a couple of small areas, but I would say 80%,
Yes.
Aaron? About 80% has been transitioned.
Major fund parking. Parking is the one that we're working on now, and it's actually probably a 40%, another 6% of all. It was actually 2.6 million when we started. So we've roughly, there's only $1 million left that still has not been transitioned, so 1.6 has been transitioned. So, and the bulk of that is predominantly parking. And we're working through some issues with them to get that.
When do you anticipate 100% completion?
It all depends. We have to negotiate credit card contracts with every single vendor. The city doesn't have one software vendor. They have several software vendors, and each software vendor has their own merchant that they prefer to work with. So it's about negotiating individual contracts with those merchants to do this process. So we're working with TAM now, and TAM is onboarding a new software, do that data collection, so hopefully we can transition that quicker. So I don't have an exact timeline, but hopefully within the next year.
Thank you.
No problem, Ross.
Linda?
Yeah, you had mentioned, I know that you're seeking someone else in the accounting and financial reporting group, particularly to help you meet those financial reporting deadlines. I was just looking at the narrative some and you described it, the challenges that have occurred since the transition to the ERP. So most of, I understand what you're trying to achieve, it makes sense. But I'm curious, like right now, when are you able to issue the monthly reports? Like how far after month end? I know you say your goal is 40.
Probably 6 months.
6 months after the month end. Oh, wow. And is this a change since the adoption of the ERP?
It is.
Okay,
It's mainly
so it's
because
solely due to this new.
it's mainly due to that, yes.
Okay.
I mean, the system, we went from a 50-plus-year-old system to something more modern, so it had to be with educating the staff on how to do it, you know, with real accounting instead of, you know, the system before, they didn't really give you debits and credits. It gave you, it had a processing behind the scenes that no one saw. So now you're seeing it on the forefront. It's in front of you. So the part of it was educating the staff. Part of it was looking at the setup, because the system that we purchased, while they do work for governments, the version we implemented was not fully ready for governments at that time. So it had a lot of challenges with the setup. So once we got the setup worked out, which was a big part of the delay last year, we were looking and seeing all these ghost numbers and trying to figure out why these large balances and variances were there. And it turns out the system processing. So once we figured all the system processing and got that corrected, now, like I said, we're about 6 months behind, and the team is more comfortable with the system now. So I think just getting this additional staff to help with the workload will help us get to more timely reporting.
Okay, very good. And the external audit finding and I think the single audit finding you mentioned, those have been since the ERP adoption as well?
I can tell you that we have more single audit findings
Okay.
in the past, and more audit findings in the last 2 years than I've had probably in the 10 years before I started. So a lot of it had to do with the changes. We got a finding for not having timely reporting. We have a finding for things being missed because when you're gathering the data, they didn't see, you know, if you didn't put it in the right bucket, it didn't pull on the report. So,
Yeah.
you know, we're figuring out those nuances with the new system. And like I said, we're single audits already with the auditors right now, and we're preparing the actual fund financials, which is way ahead of where we were last year.
Okay, very good. So, and so you would be going from 70 employees in the department to 73?
Well, no, it'd be 72, because the program audit is gonna be outsourced. We
Okay,
want an external source to come out and take a look at it instead of internal staff.
okay, gotcha. Okay, thank you, Linda.
No problem.
I mean, Melissa,
No question.
Okay,
you have one?
Yes,
so thank you for answering some of the questions that
absolutely.
I announced on Monday. I understand from your procurement volume, which is 500 million excluding Prospect Lake. One of the questions I had, and to share with the board as well, is how much do we know that we procure at the best level of performance compared to market prices? And one of your answers was, this is the manual calculation that's currently not tracked by procurement. And I was asking, why would it not be a great KPI, key performance index? You mentioned some others for your department. So if procurement gets much better than general market prices, I think this KPI would be very interesting to see. So any project to make it more systematic and internal to your department with a real, not manual calculation case by case, but generally.
Well, we just onboarded a new vendor with IT to help us generate performance metrics in the system. One of our asks will be with this vendor to see if there's a way that he can program that information
Okay.
inside the
So you're
system.
considering it.
We're considering it, but in the meantime, we do have a procurement tracker internally. And part of what we will be doing with the procurement tracker is to put these values in there so we can have it readily available. We already track every single procurement that's on the market right now, and so we would just add it as additional measure. I have my Chief Procurement Officer, Glenn Marcos here. Glenn, do you wanna add any more feedback?
That's exactly it, we do have an internal system, it's actually a SharePoint site. We wanna capture cost savings, we wanna capture it in several ways, because the art of capturing cost savings can be debated. So it can be as simple as subtracting the highest bid to the lowest bid. That might be not the best practice, perhaps maybe getting a mean of all bids and then subtracting it with the lower. And then we're also looking at the fact that there's value added cost savings. And what I mean by that is when we issue an RFP, you might have different proposals with different costs. So we're actually wanting to capture what's negotiated. So not only from the highest proposal to the lowest proposal, but once we go into competitive negotiations, how well are we doing with negotiating those prices? Okay.
Okay. What I did was I prepared a table of all the city's outstanding debt that shows you the outstanding debt, what the principal is, and when these things mature, so you know when they fell off. I had some questions about it, I just don't know if you guys wanted it, I wanted to share, brought a little handout. Huh? Yeah, I know. Some people, yeah. It's somewhere summarized in the budget book, but that gives you a high level overview of everything bonded. And I think the key thing is on the far right hand side, you see their interest rates and you see when they would fall off the city's books and be available as, transfers. That could remain in the funds.
One of the question I had raised for the board was, where do we stand in terms of city long-term debt per resident compared to other cities in Florida? I think it's an important benchmark that we should have at high level. So I think, thank you, that's very helpful.
Well, I think didn't we see those on the charts that you sent us, on the questions that you gave us? We are substantially higher per capita,
We are.
but we just took on 200 million, 400?
40 million in general obligation bonds. I think there's another 60 million that was voter approved that we're not ready to draw on yet.
So get AAA rating.
We still get AAA rating.
Yeah. AAA rating, what might be one of the criteria we're looking.
Yeah.
Maybe we have other criteria.
No, I know, but I'm just saying when you've reached,
No.
interest rate is determined by that.
We have a very good rate on our bonds. So,
We got a lot of them, we borrowed a lot of money when rates were really low,
yep.
That's
we did.
true.
which was
Yeah.
phenomenal. Now we're making a bunch of money for the state, for the government. Who gets
Yeah,
it? The state?
No, the federal government.
Federal government.
Government makes it.
Yeah.
That's a hoax.
I know.
Alright.
Okay,
That's why I'm saying, why even challenge yourself to bring in treasuries in-house? Really?
Just leave it
Really.
outsourced.
Just leave it outsourced and just negotiate the advisory fee, just buy laddered bonds and just leave them alone, let them mature, don't bother with it. You can't keep any, I mean, you can, but there's no benefit.
Good point.
I'll buy you a bond ladder and leave you alone.
Gotcha.
quick questions here. On the accounts payable position, what is the current processing time from when you receive an invoice to it's actually paid? The reason why I ask, and this has some effect on procurement and vendors, because I've heard that a lot of vendors will not bid to the city because it takes way too long to get paid.
All right.
And therefore, that affects only one or two vendors applying, and then they can put whatever pricing they want onto it, so we're not getting competitive pricing. So what is that processing time currently, and if you get this position, what could it be reduced to as a benchmark?
All right, so there are two factors that affects the payment of invoices. Finance Department receives all invoices we have the Florida Prompt Payment Act for those who don't know, and per the Florida Prompt Payment Act, we're supposed to pay vendors for operating related things within 45 days and construction within 20 days. So finance will get it, but we do not control we don't control the time it takes for the departments to do their review and approve the invoice for payment. So once we receive the approval from departments, we pay within 10 days, within 7 to 10 days.
You still have a cumulative 45 and 20.
Right, but the typical time that it takes for the review is for the departments to conduct their review,
Right.
do their approvals, and then authorize us to then release the payment.
But that
So
happens within 45 days.
it should, so when I ran the analysis last month, we're paying on average about 43 to 44 days on average. So this person
You do
will
it.
help to at least process the invoices to get them in there. But we still heavily rely on the departments to complete their review. We can maybe do more follow-up with them timely because we don't have as much time to say, hey, where are you? This invoice is outstanding, because we're just processing. So this will help us be able to reach out to the departments and say, hey, this has been sitting with you for a week. We haven't seen it processed. Give us an update. We don't do as much follow-up as we used to. And I think the follow-up is to help them, remind them or get them to get it done quicker. So this will help us with that. And how much? I'm hoping to get it within 30 days.
And then my only other question is, on the P card third-party audit, to me, 40,000 seems low for an audit. What percentage of the total number of P cards in the city system do we currently have users? And what percentage of that audit going to annually review?
Jason, are you here?
Yeah.
How many P cards do we have currently?
Around 300.
We have about 300 active cards, and per our audit process right now, we audit 10% of all transactions, and then 100% of, and then we take like two or two or three cards per department and do 100% of it. So, but typically it's 10% of all transactions,
Okay, and that's gonna be the same scope with this third party,
similar, yes.
and so you feel that's sufficient?
It is because it's not really an audit more than an agreed upon procedure where they come in and review and they'll provide it. And I don't wanna just do it annually, they will be reviewing it on a quarterly basis. And the quote that I received was a quote that I got a year and a half ago, and I had it trued up a little bit, so.
Very good. No other questions. I want to thank you. Great presentation.
Excellent. Good evening, board members. My name is Angela Marinas. I'm the acting IT director. So I've been in this role for a full 2 weeks, so bear with me. A little bit about IT. I'm a strong believer that excellent in business is, the excellent in business operation is directly tied back to the effectiveness of IT services. One thing that we have done in the last year is focus on building solutions that enhance our city in multiple areas. For example, we've done a modernization project that we've modernized all our servers, or most of our servers. As Tamika would say, some of the servers that we inherited were old enough to drink. But our goal is to continue to move in that direction. So we have implemented a very fruitful solution, which is our ITSM solution, which has provided us visibility now and transparency to see a number of tickets where are our low-hanging fruits to help us identify our solutions. Our focus is gonna be governance, control, cybersecurity, and the analytics to make informed decisions. That is our main goal. A little bit about the team, as you probably are aware, IT runs pretty lean. Our department hasn't had much position growth in the last couple of years. we continue to operate, so the average, our average, right now, we support over 3,003 employees citywide. These are active employees around the city. So the average market to support that number of resources, it averages between 12 and 15 per 12 to $15,000 per employee. We're averaging about 9,000 per employee. So that to give you kind of a little bit of idea how lean we are operating today. We've been asked to reduce our budget for the coming year. We're gonna work very closely to identify the areas if there's any possibility. But as I just clearly mentioned, we're really running very lean as is. A little bit, you asked, Mildred, you asked a very good question about community services. One of the things that we have embraced in IT is to educate around cybersecurity. So we have gone out to multiple HOAs to provide cybersecurity awareness. We're actually partnering up with the YMCA in District 3 to provide cybersecurity awareness and knowledge. We are investing in definitely the younger generation to understand what's the impact of cybersecurity, and by teaching the younger generation, we automatically teach the adults because they will ask questions. So we're very happy to engage in those areas. I will get straight into our packages. So our very first decision package is about a replacement plan. So this particular replacement plan, what we have done to avoid finding ourselves in the position that we were 2-3 years ago, that a lot of the servers were end of life. It was a common theme to come into any meeting and talk about end of life servers or end of life hardware. It was very common because most of the hardwares were old, abandoned, and it required significant more support than the newer modernization technology that was adopted along the way. So this particular replacement plan is some of the on-prem servers that we currently have. These on-prem servers, while we are focused on moving towards the cloud, these particular on-prem servers actually support applications that are either not cloud friendly or cannot be moved to the cloud for a number of reasons. Now, the replacement plan, what we've done, we have multiple servers that their end of life is in FY 2026. To be budget conscious, we split that cost in 2 years. So you'll notice that the budget proposal has a dollar amount and there's a year 2 dollar amount. So basically, this includes servers and switches, which is all component of the hardware that is actually required, right? So our goal is to get in a regular replacement plan and establish that going forward. This way, anything that's coming up as end of life, A, we have a clear budget for. B, we have the ability to forecast because it's something that wasn't happening in the past. And with this replacement plan, so you're gonna see it FY 2026, FY 2027, FY 2028, it will continue to come back up because we're replacing as the hardware ends their life term, we're replacing the hardware. So that is package number 1. Okay, I'll move into decision package number 2, endpoint management program. So package number 1, continuation of modernization, which is extremely important for the city of our side. Package number 2 is related to cybersecurity. And I can get into a lot of details with cybersecurity. That this is an area that citywide, we are investing a lot of time, money, and focus in order to improve this particular area. the endpoint, this is a technology that we're actually procuring in order for us to identify any product that is sitting out there that hasn't been registered. So this way, whether it's in the Active Directory or user access, for example, and I'll give you a prime example. Without this product, we had an employee that left the city and we weren't able to, the employee left. We actually separated the employee for a number of reasons. There was no clear indication what administrative right that individual had. So we had to physically identify all the tools the individual had used in order to shut down their access. This product will prevent that. And that's the goal that we have with this, in order to establish the particular individual that I'm speaking about, and this is one in few. So this particular individual had access to very data that was very sensitive data that we needed to make sure that we needed to move quickly and effectively to get this done. So we had to throw an entire team to sort of, and I like to call it peeling the onion back, to identify all the access this individual had. Our goal is with this program, we will eliminate that manpower, the number of hours doing this. We can easily identify all the components, whether it's a mobile device, whether it's access, whether it's administrative access. That's the goal of package number 2. Package number 3, cybersecurity professional. As I mentioned, cybersecurity for us is enormous. As you can imagine, with the modernization comes a lot of visibility into the challenges that we have around cybersecurity. So requesting for this professional service, what he has helped us with, we have moved, we're identifying, fulfilling a complete assessment of all the vulnerable areas that we have, and as a result, we've been able to identify, for example, we have, and I'll give you exact numbers so I don't mess that up. Second here, while I go back to my notes here. So out of the active 3,000 employees, just to give you an idea, we internally have produced 11,355 phishing emails. Why do we do that? We want to check the health of the understanding of cybersecurity. Out of 11,355, 1,460 were recorded as failures in a period of 6 months. Of which 480 are associated with individuals entering their password into a link that they shouldn't be doing, right? So professional services is helping us identify that. What we have done now, he has helped us establish technology that we have the visibility to really in real time determine who are the frequent flyers, as we like to call them, that we've realized in some cases we've identified employees that out of 17 phishing emails that we sent purposely, 17 times have been clicked on the link. So professional services will continue to help us identify those areas that we need to target as a result of all the analysis that we're doing around this. So number 3, number 4. This is service desk staffing and augmentation. We're asking for the professional fundings to staff our service desk with temporary resources. What this has gained us, if we went from having phone calls, service requests taking 2 minutes on a call, the average 2-minute, we were able to reduce it to 9 seconds. So we would like to continue that level of support while we go through this transition period of modernization. Our goal is to establish, for example, we recently did an analysis this past week utilizing our current tools, we did many analysis on the data to kind of identify what was the problem. The number one call to the service desk is password reset. Where password reset or I'm having issues with my printer. So through these professional services, we're gonna be able to identify how do we support those low hanging fruits, eliminate the password reset, come up with methods that the user can automatically reset their password. And that would, so I'm suspecting, and my goal is that the professional service will continue to be, we'll continue to reduce it as the years go through, as we find these low hanging fruits and resolve them. Okay, the next one that we have is our GIS professional service. This is also another professional services, but this is with our ESRI tool. The city of Fort Lauderdale, we like to implement enterprise solutions. One of the enterprise solutions that we currently have, which serves the city enormously, our GIS solution is our mapping solution that everybody's familiar with. Well, during the flood, I think that's where I reflect the most, because this is when this particular application became very beneficial for the entire city. Not only were we able to tell where we had flooding, we were able to track with real-time precision in order for our public safety to understand where we had the greatest challenges. And utilizing this application, this is how we were able to present at the federal level where we had our challenges, and the city was actually granted federal funds based on the results of this application. So the goal with the professional services is to continue to optimize the application for the benefit of the city. This application or this solution is currently used by Public Works, police, fire, ESD. It is a citywide solution. Our City Works uses this application, and SeeClickFix also has an integration into this application with real-time data mapping, which is very valuable. Package number 6, this is an asset management part-time position that we're asking for. You may or may not know, the IT department today, we used to reside next door at City Hall. Today, we're at 1901 West Cypress Creek. It takes about 35 to 45 minutes to drive from that location to this location. Or quite frankly, to any of the locations that we support, the average time is between 30 and 40 minutes. So this particular position, our goal with this position is to, instead of having senior engineers right around the city to deliver services, for example, a camera's out. So instead of having that engineer go to storage, pick up the camera, because the storage facility is not located where we're physically located either. So the engineer leaves our office, goes to storage, picks up the equipment, that's about half an hour. Leaves the storage unit, goes to the location, that's about another half hour. If he needs to return equipment to the storage, that's another half hour back, and then a half hour back into the office. So if you really add all that time, you know, one of the things you probably remember, perhaps from last year's presentation, time is money. And we have equated that if we've accounted for that if we have this temporary position, we almost go into the mindset of being logistically delivering the parts instead of the engineer riding around. So the engineer would go to the location, the asset individual will not only help us track the asset, but also take the item, put it in a van, drive it to the location, deliver the object, and become more of a sort of a delivery service operation that we were going to do. This is an interim solution while, of course, we reside away from City Hall. And see, the last, I think, is the radio communication enhancement. And this is to continue to grow our radio shop efficiency. Our radio shop today, they support public works, they public safety. And Jason, do you wanna add a little bit? I have Jason, our acting assistant director, overseeing the radio shop.
Yeah, thank you. Last year you guys, were kind enough to, give us an allocation for temporary services. We ended up, utilizing those services. We were, able to, implement a very aggressive preventative maintenance program, which reduced unexpected downtime for our public safety users, particularly. That generated some stats, and we realized that it made sense to bring those services out of the realm of an outside contractor to somebody in-house. Because the benefit to our public safety users is that their service intervals were predictable versus not predictable. And we were able to effectively be proactive as far as the maintenance is concerned on their equipment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I believe that concludes our packages.
Go around, starting with. Audrey?
Thank you.
I'm glad to hear about the work with District 3, with the YMCA.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding your phishing emails. Do you all have a phishing button?
We do.
And is there education surrounding that to all the employees about pushing it?
We have extensive communication around that. We're now adopting a whole new process. This assessment, actually, I completed it yesterday. So one of the proposals that I've putting together is we're gonna pull out one of our resources. We're actually creating a project. We're calling it a training project. And we're gonna use a project manager and one of our service desk resources to go out in the field. So we know the departments that are the highest offender based on those analytics. And now we're gonna target those particular departments really to educate. Because I think different approaches have been recommended, holding the individuals accountable, responsible, right? And definitely, I think that's an opportunity that needs to be explored. I also believe that empowering end users to understand the impact of clicking that link and educating them that if you click that little button, it goes away. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And we're gonna take that at the department level. There's 3 major departments that have been identified. Interesting enough, it's our largest departments, and we're gonna have a laser focus of training them, walking them through the process, not only recognizing what a phishing email looked like, bringing that level of awareness to empower them to really understand what that little phishing button is all about, and also understand not entering your credentials at a link that you have no idea where it's going. It's a bad idea. But thank you for asking that question.
Thank you. No further questions.
Just a quick question. Thank you,
Yes.
Angela.
You're very welcome.
I definitely appreciate your server modernization plan. Seems very important. And this is more just, I guess, reflecting back on 2023. I guess, I wasn't on this board back then, and I know a lot happened during the April 12th storm event. I was under the impression that a lot of the servers were in the basement of the old city hall. Maybe that's not true. I was just curious what was lost at that time during the flood. Did that lead to an immediate purchase of some new server type equipment? Or was most of the stuff off-site and
Obviously, already, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Good question. Thank you for asking that. Flood 23 was the worst and the best thing that happened to the city from an IT perspective. Worst because our servers were actually on the 6th floor in a room that had windows, glass window. While that room did not get flooded, when the basement was flooded, it actually took the power out of the building out. When we went up to the server room, we needed generators to get the servers back up and running. Some of the servers were physically carried out, like down the stairs, 6 flights, and physically carried out. A modernization plan was established that time, which was spearheaded by Tamika. And we actually moved a lot of our solutions into Azure and the cloud, Azure, and I apologize. We moved it into the cloud. Now, these particular servers that we're asking for replacement are servers that were not end of life at that time and could not be moved to the cloud at that time. But absolutely, the modernization that happened between 2023 and today is massive. Linda mentioned earlier about our ERP system. That was a perfect example. Luckily, our financial team had already gone live with their financial solution, and the payroll was still on-prem, and that we carried physically down 6 flights of steps. And printed checks on a printer that we carry physically down. A very good question. But modernization definitely did take place. And we have a report on it, and I'm happy to share that with specific details. These particular servers that we're putting on the replacements plan is servers that we know are going to have an end of life. Call it an expiration date. So we know there's an expiration date, and that expiration date, what we want to do is bring it up to our budget team early enough so they know to put it in a plan that it needs to be replaced. It's almost like any hardware that we have that comes to expiration. And what do I mean by expiration too? Realize when servers have an end of life, they're no longer supported. That means they no longer get patched and very easily become a cybersecurity risk.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, my pleasure.
No question.
Thank you.
You talked at the end about getting a position added for logistics and because they put you in a different location. That wasn't at the time discussed, or that was already a place that was leased and then you backfilled some of it. I'm assuming you didn't sign a brand new lease somewhere. That didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
We're sorry, or that did happen. Sorry, I didn't mean to put it that bluntly, but I'm saying.
No, I appreciate you
I thought
asking. No, there was no plan about, from day one, I had a concern about logistics.
Yeah.
Because it really has, to be quite honest, it's really added a challenge, right?
Sure. Seems that.
That's the reason I was a couple of minutes even late for this, because you can never time.
So again, that was a new lease you signed at the time, or was it a building you had master lease and you said, oh, we got some room over here?
No, it's a new lease that we signed. Yeah, after the flood, absolutely. We moved into that building March 8th, 2024.
Sure. I'm assuming it was leased for 3 years, so you don't have the ability to leave, you'd rather hire somebody. Because it's the reality for the next year and a half, or how much longer?
And it's potentially,
Because you're gonna hire a new position, but if your lease is up in a year, is it a decision that you could make a year from now and make everything more efficient by getting a new office? Then we have a discussion about where you need to get a new office or not.
one of the things that I'm putting together is a proposal for our managers, a city manager's office. So they take into account a lot of the items that an IT department requires. For example, we sometimes get pallets
Sure.
full of equipment. So we wanna make sure that the next time around, there's some
Security
assessment.
concerns as well.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Good, thank you for asking.
Just quick follow-up on that, would you say that this position, logistics position pays for itself by the cost saving on engineer time?
Absolutely.
Is it
Let me
fair
give
to
it,
say?
absolutely. I did a high level assessment. So, to me, I like to account for hours worked. So one of the things that we did is we looked at only 4 engineers. And we wanted to look at those 4 engineers and what the time that I explained, from 1901 to a storage unit to a location, back to the storage unit and back. So assuming that these 4 resources only do this once a day, for a full year, at the average prorated hourly rate, it averaged somewhere between $72,000 and $75,000 a year, to give you an idea, of 4 resources. Yes, sir.
This is a part-time position
Yes,
that you're budgeting, asking 155,000 for the first year.
it's a
Nice
budget
part-time
position.
Yeah,
It-
sure.
Yes, but it does include, so it includes the gas for the vehicle, it includes the vehicle. A lot of, let me break it down for you.
We have the numbers here.
Yep, the numbers are here. So we broke it down, gasoline, software, because we wanna make sure that when he delivers the product, he scans it, right? We're talking about $1,200, $1,500, $10,000 hardware. We're not saying a USB drive, right? So we're talking about very expensive equipment, and we wanna make sure that when the equipment exits our storage, it gets scanned. And when it gets delivered, it gets scanned, similar to your Amazon or
Sure.
a UPS delivery. We wanna make sure we prove that the item is there.
And you're in the midst of a planner proposal so that the part-time position's part-time, and then hopefully there's a new planner proposal that you're coming up with. It's the things change, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, we wanna, again, our goal, if we could be here downtown, we happily move downtown. That's not a possibility at this time. We have a 3-year lease, and we were reminded just today that that lease does not end until 2027. So we, yeah, absolutely. So this is a reality for us for the
Okay.
next minimum 3 years. But thank you for asking.
A few questions. Number one. Predecessor Tamika, one of the things that kept her awake at night was security incident for our system. And we didn't get it really into depth. She was gonna have a member of the team explain it, but due to the time restraints. And I'm still concerned, even with your 2 budget proposed items, is that going to reduce our risk of cybersecurity, of taking the city system down? Or do we need more? Do we have, is this gonna bring it up to the level that needs to be brought up?
Our goal, right now, our goal is, yeah. Thank you.
It was part of your answers to one of the
I haven't had a
questions
chance,
asked.
I just got
Okay.
there.
Should it keep us up at night? Yes. Cybersecurity should keep all of us up at night. All of us, it should keep us up. I just gave you an example, 11,000 pest phishing email that almost 50% of the city failed. They clicked on the link. So our phishing attacks via email are high and critical. Which is the reason I'm actually pulling 2 resources from a very lean team as is to go dedicate them to train end users. Is it enough? Likely for our size of organization, based on industry, it says we are. Right? Based on the industry, it says, yes, we are sized accurately for cybersecurity. Now, what that standard doesn't take into consideration, our critical level. So at one point, our cyber CISO who provided information, our score was less than 1.7. We have improved the score to about 5.2. But there's a lot of work in cybersecurity to accomplish. We have a lot of work to do. So, but based on industry standards, the answer would be yes. Based on where the city is today, mind you, cybersecurity, while it keeps us all at night, up at night, cybersecurity became a major concern within the last 2 to 3 years, which we've been working heavily to tackle and resolve, which is the reason that now I'm pulling data analytics to really see where our problems are. Because we have a campaign, I think somebody asked about a campaign earlier. We have a full campaign of training. We send notices, we even have a department that won an award. We want to incentivize individuals, So we want you to wake up in the morning and think of cybersecurity and go to bed thinking cybersecurity. That has not happened, which is the reason that I'm in a lean department as is, we're pulling two resources to go tackle this, because in my professional opinion, of over 25 years of being in this industry of technology, we are in a position that is not if, it's when. So thank you for
Okay.
asking that question.
Yeah, and because even if this gets into the budget, which to me, cybersecurity is a high priority, you won't have access to October. Then how long will that take to implement? 6, 8, 12 months, you think?
This professional service, what we're gonna do with those funds is extend our current CISO. So he can help us continue to improve and stabilize where we are.
And then the only thing, I don't know if this would be in your department, but it was expressed from the dais at our joint workshop about, it's primarily District 3, but citywide connectivity. Does your department handle the citywide IT Wi-Fi system, or
We
who's
do.
responsible?
Yeah, broadband is definitely a challenge across the city, without a doubt. We are working with District 3 for a number of reasons, like through pilot programs. We're trying to introduce, in fact, I worked very closely with Commissioner Beasley on these, because we are introducing, there's two broadband projects right now. One, it's a project that was funded through DSD. So Rachel and I are working very closely. There's an RFP that went out for that particular district. And I have a pilot program at Carter Park that we're introducing to the city to grow that across the city. Broadband is a challenge. And would you like to add anything, Jason?
Yes, it's definitely on our radar map. We are looking at it, as Angela alluded to, we're looking at that as part and parcel to some of our smart city initiatives as well. Yes, you're gonna start seeing pilots in the not too distant future in some of those underserved areas.
So you already have that built into your budget, any cost for that?
It's a pilot program. So we were awarded, I applied for a pilot program. And we, the city of Fort Lauderdale, were awarded, we were selected, so we're very proud of that. And right now that is going through our procurement process. So as soon as that gets approved, we're ready to kick it off. Thank you for asking.
No further questions. Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you.
That was cumulative.
I have currently at 6:24. I know earlier I mentioned, and Oliver had brought in a slide presentation, but I've not had a chance to review it. There's been, I got, staff has concerns along the city manager that we've not had an opportunity to send it out to the members. It's pretty detailed. It's going to take a lot of discussion. So either we can have a special meeting, because we still have the CRA yet to do. So.
Can I say something,
Yeah, I'm
Chairman?
just thinking maybe if you just give a quick overview, we don't get any discussion today. We send it out, the public, we send it out.
All I would suggest that my motivation as a new board member was to maybe enjoy a fresh look at, and you know, I was inspired by Ross Camarada's presentation about the loss of revenue. And this was one of the ideas that maybe we need to look into that to improve our concern for the budget in the next couple of years compared to the potential loss of revenues from Ad Valorem and et cetera. So I started looking at different ways of maybe resolving that problem, and I'd like to maybe send it to you and share that with the board. But bear with me, it's a fresh look, there are provocative ideas. And I try to obviously do a lot of math and research and benchmarking. But I would love the opportunity to share it and discuss it with my fellow board members in an interactive format. So don't take it as a draft and a provocation to disrupt and think about how we approach the budget. If it's not for this year, maybe that will be
a good exercise for next year. And I put it in context that there are some concerns from the city commission. They said we're looking for BAB to have recommendation and proactive recommendation to solve these issues. I think we should have an answer by the workshop in June. If we don't have all the answers, at least we should have a draft. And I'd like to, start this conversation and this exercise, but with very concrete numbers that I've put in this 10 slides. So maybe send it
Let's do that, let's send it
and have a
out.
session together maybe next week or before or after, I don't know.
The meetings next week and the week after are usually longer. Because of fire and at least I would say tack it on the back on those, or if you don't think it's gonna make any difference for this year, maybe we do it after the cycle sometime in the summer.
So my recommendation, as chair would be, let's get it sent out. All board members, take a look at it.
Yeah.
Give us feedback between now and next week to remain. Do we think we can allow 30-minute discussion, or we can split it up amongst the two meetings?
I just wanna make one comment, because you're extremely enthusiastic, which is awesome, right?
Well,
First
it's
year.
one of the privileges of a new board member, I
That's right.
suppose.
It's
Opposed to
100%.
an outgoing board member.
That's right. I'm still enthusiastic, but I will tell you that, and we were mentioning earlier here, it took me a solid 2 years to really understand what we could do, what we couldn't do. Right? And I'm still learning, as you said, I'm still coming here learning. So I think it would be good for all of us to read it. I don't know if all of us know if we can do that or not, the stuff, but.
It's more about the question, Ross, if I may. It's so, look at the question I put in the slides, rather I don't have answers. And I think that's the exercise that we should have. And I think having the privilege of having a fresh outlook from a new city manager might also promote new ideas and new ways of looking at it. So
And I would only say is if some of those statements are based around human resources, finance, or IT, tonight would have been the forum to do it. Until next week, we have fire, parks, recreation, who else? That's the time to bring these questions up, right?
I thought that was time sensitive.
Yeah, it
So
is.
let's get it out,
Let's get it
take a
out. We
look,
should've got it out
let's get
earlier.
feedback.
I didn't do it.
And then we can.
Get to work.
I finished it yesterday.
Based on your feedback, staff will
Yeah, it'd be great.
have a conversation before our next meeting and figure out a game plan.
Just a side note, I won't be able to be in person on the 21st as a regular meeting. I would love to attend via Zoom, but the interactivity should happen maybe between us so I can explain what my slides entail if needed before that.
Well, we have to be careful of sunshine.
Yeah.
Interact.
It would have to be next week.
No, interactive during a meeting.
It would have to be next, sure, it's gonna have to be next week.
Okay, very good.
And next week's not a, I call it a sanctioned meeting, but
Yeah.
it's not, right? It's another meeting like this, right? We could throw it on.
Okay,
Thank you.
be looking for it in your inboxes. Okay, very good. Again, all three of you, great work.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for your work.
Sounds like you're staying on top of IT issues, actually jumping in as active.
Thank you.
Now we're gonna do this CRA, who's conducting the CRA?
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, there you are.
We got the slides.
Good job, guys.
Does anyone need a 5-minute restroom break? Let's do a 5-minute restroom break.
Oh, they're taking 5 minutes. Oh, there we go. Yes,
I'll go through it, I don't care.
Yeah. Okay, we're reconvene.
Right.
So I'll let you kick off.
So, Sarah, are we giving him a timer as well? No. Okay.
You can.
You've got a lot of slides if you don't wanna be here very long.
So good afternoon, Laura Reese, and all of you. This information is gonna be a repeat for a lot of you. We did present at a meeting last June, New Year's June, to the Budget Advisory Board, and then we presented the same information again at goal setting with the commission. So a lot of this is repeat information. We're just trying to share back with you because you all requested another kind of peek at it in case you would like to weigh in. Clarence is our CRA manager over the Northwest Progressive CRA and the Central City CRA. So he's my colleague. He's here with me today. We're gonna tag team this presentation. I'll speak a little bit about the financial aspect. He'll chime in on some of the operational piece. We also have, others in the room that may chime in as well. Chris Cooper is actually, CRA has transitioned to be part of his portfolio now. So he's coming up in that context. At this point, we met with the city commission at goal setting, and they provided direction to city staff, sort of like bottom line up front, here's the direction we're operating under, then we're gonna share with you the background if you wanna weigh in. We met with the city commission and they did share with us that they would like to extend the Northwest Progressive CRA for 10 additional years at 50% of the TIF. So Chris, Clarence, and I have been working with the county to draft an extension ILA, and the plan is for that ILA to go to the commission at the next meeting. So everything is in progress to have that happen before the budget process. So that's where we are. Understanding Commissioner Glassman did bring up in the goal setting that, if you all wanted to look at it, it would be the time to look at it before they approve the agreement. I think that's kind of why we've been asked to share with you today a little recap of the CRA and where we are, because the opportunity to weigh in is kind of closing. They have already provided that direction and they would be voting on that probably at the next meeting. Is there anything you'd add for context setting?
No, I think that's pretty good description of where we're at. I think the idea that CRA could and should extend for a period of time was a discussion that the commission had at goal setting, as Laura said, albeit at a reduced rate. Clarence can talk a little bit more about how that money could be used when we get to that point at the end of the presentation, but the idea is to continue to drive the economic vitality, even looking for affordable CRA within the area. We'll get to more of that as we get.
Okay, so many of you are familiar with the Northwest boundaries. If I got the map. Just as a reminder for those of you who haven't talked about TIF in a while, TIF is the tax increment financing. It's a way of leveraging growth in areas to finance redevelopment or to continue redevelopment in an area. So the TIF calculation is essentially when an area is created for a TIF, there's a base year. So 1995 was the base year of the taxable value for the Northwest community, and it was $208 million at that time. Since then, so any growth in taxable value is reinvested at the current millage rate back into the area. So the calculation takes the base year, it takes the new taxable value that's provided for that area by the property appraiser, and they give us that value as of June 1st for the budget, and then again on July 1st, which is what we have to use for the adopted budget. And then we apply our millage rate, which is 4.1193, and then that's 95% of that value. So it's the equivalent of that value. We do a transfer from the general fund into the CRA to be used for redevelopment in the Northwest. Over the past 5 years, not only the city, but Broward County, the Children's Service Council, and the hospital district have also contributed. So under the first 30 years, we received revenue from a lot of different areas, and that really did help to do a lot of redevelopment in the area. Understanding that 2025 or the current fiscal year is the last year before the Northwest expires, this would be the last year that we receive revenue from the other governments. And the direction would be for the city's contribution to, instead of being at that 95%, would only be at 50%. So it takes the city's contribution from 12 million down to 6 million. So, but this shows that, a lot of growth happened over the past 5 years, and the total revenue that was received into the Northwest over the past 5 years. And a part of what the Northwest pays for is the operating costs. And so this depicts what the operating costs are of the total budget, so 2.9%. Or I'm sorry, $2.9 million in fiscal year 2026 for the base budget. And some considerations we shared with the city commission is there's still opportunities to improve the area. There's, needs that continue, redevelopment opportunities that Clarence has underway. Most of the funding historically has been put into incentives in this area, so Clarence partners with developers to attract affordable housing, to, do a lot of other work he'll talk about in the area. CRA rules, one of the downsides of continuing, of having funding flowing through the CRA is there's really strict limits on what you can use funds for. So it limits the flexibility. For example, you can't spend it to address police and fire and other needs that are created from the growth in the area. And there's always competing funds or competing priorities for the general fund.
Do we have a definition of that? Do we have somewhere where we could read those rules?
Yes, there are specific rules we can share with you on the CRA plan kind of
Statute.
outlines what you can use.
Right, the statute is 163, full statute 163, 350, 360.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we can look it up and share that with you.
So
But
there's a
yeah,
statute, but then also in the creation back in 95, and then it was subsequently amended and updated in 2016 is the plan for the area, and that plan, for one, it creates the basis for the creation of the CRA, which is the determination that there is slum and blight in the area, and then strategies for how to improve the area over a period of time. So some of those spending limitations are within the statute, there's certain functions we can't spend it on, but then there's also the expectation that we spend within that strategy that's been approved by the CRA. So both those documents would be important for context in terms of
I'm just
how we
assuming that if we put CRA rules limit flexibility in a slide like this, there's gotta be a clear. definition.
That's in the statute, that's in the statute.
And you're saying we're a little more flexible than the statute?
We're not flexible, but then we adopt a plan for the revitalization of that area, and that plan includes the types of efforts and activities that the city has said to spend money on. So it further, not limits, but it further it specifies what types of projects and activities that we spend that money on.
so part of the discussion around why it was changed to 50% versus 100% of the growth is, in Flagler Village, there's been a lot of high rises development. We do need additional police officers and firefighters to service those areas. So the thought was we would, transition to spending some of those money on general government services, which wouldn't be allowed under the CRA. So that's why ultimately the 50-50 split was determined when the discussion happened at the
Is this a question session? If not, I'll hold on.
yeah, I mean,
Is it open or are you going through a presentation first?
Yeah,
Let's ask questions, cause
Oh,
I know,
So while I'm still on that, Chair, let me continue to go forward then. So we need more police officers and services in that area. Didn't we think about that prior to building?
sure, so as we have building that occurs, more police and fire
Right.
services are required, and we have been gearing that up, as you know, over the budgets.
Yep.
There has always been built into our financial modeling the sunset of the CRA because it was intended to sunset. And so we now have changed the assumption from, it fully sunsetting to sunsetting 50%, which transitions out 6 million more than what we had previously included in our model.
Can that be a set number instead of a percentage?
Can I'm not sure, I haven't seen that, but we could look into that, but
Had we done that 30 years ago? Right? No? Second.
if it could be a fix versus
I'm
based
just,
on growth.
I'm just trying to, we also have to look at, being in District 1, you guys aren't there. This is part of District 4, 3?
2 and 3.
Two and three.
So there's been a few, we've had, I think, 3 CRAs, at least that I recall. The first one was the beach CRA, so that was, I don't know if it was District 2 back then, it's
That just
District 2
ended.
primarily today. It sunset a few years ago. We have the Northwest CRA, which is set to expire this year, which covers Commission Districts 2 and 3. 2 and 3. Then we have the Central City CRA, which is north of Sunrise, which includes mostly District 2 and a portion of District 3, so. That
Anything in
one's-
District 1? Okay. Can I continue or?
Continue.
Okay. Do we know the dollar amount of projects we funded since 1995, or if not, the last 5 years?
So we have, it's coming.
And
I don't know.
the follow-up to that would be how many of those projects have closed since then? And how much money have we lost because of that?
When you say lost,
Yeah.
you talking about?
So the city hasn't technically lost any money. The city and the other taxing agencies haven't lost. It's the funding that is generated through the ad valorem revenue from those projects is directed back into the district. So they're not.
How much do the taxpayers lose?
You don't lose.
Well, here's what I think is the real question. So there, at times, there are businesses that are supported with the incentives. If the business doesn't succeed is what you're
Correct.
indicating, and like
Correct.
what, have there been cases where the business didn't continue to operate and it was a lot, ultimately the city didn't benefit from funds that it invested? Is that your question?
That's my question.
Okay, that was.
So we don't fund operations of businesses. We fund the physical or renovation and rehab of the physical space. So even if a business goes out of business, the real estate appreciates at some point in time. It continues to appreciate.
Who owns the real estate?
It would be private owners or whomever.
So, for instance, Holly Blue. How much money did we invest into that project?
Holly Blue, what is
The church on Third.
The church and the restaurant.
It's now a second place.
It's empty.
No, it's, right?
Something on.
It's empty.
No, it's a new steakhouse.
Yes, Rio.
Yeah.
They just rented it.
I think we gave them like $350,000. It was a PVIP, which is it's to renovate the inside and then facade.
So the reason why I ask, and forgive me, and these are questions I already had premeditated, these aren't coming from my head, and there's a reason for it, right? This is an investment fund, wouldn't you agree?
Investment fund?
Yeah, we're investing in the city. An investment, the definition of an investment is a return of your principal.
It's an incentive fund to incentivize development. While we gave $350,000, that owner put far more into that building than we did.
So when I look back at the freedom and flexibility or the lack of flexibility that you all have in investments, I see in the list that you have now, a number of more restaurants and eateries and pubs. I have a pub that you guys gave $500,000 to that still hasn't gone under construction, and the LLC had just closed down.
Yeah, and we're gonna pull that money back.
Okay, so
That money hadn't gone out. If you're talking about.
restaurants are horrible investments. And we're investing in them. We're putting a lot of money into them. Why?
Because we're trying to
Instead of buying buildings.
we're trying to create, well, that's a strategy as well, but we're trying to create a.
So that was our discretion, doing the hospitality in the restaurants rather than buying the real estate of the dirt,
So
or
there's a
what's the
process.
discretion?
There's a process. So I mean, I'll go back to the beginning. So the
Sure.
state of Florida created this program to create CRAs, right? So
Understood.
the idea was like you could designate an area within your city that
Yeah.
had demonstrated level of slum and blight, that you could create a strategy by then
Sure.
to improve that area over a 30-year period of time. The idea is that as you continuously invest and others invest in that area, that money comes back into that area to continue that reinvestment, right? So you hit the 30 years, you either decide, we've done what we intended to do, or there's still work to do. And that's what we're suggesting, is there's still work to do, and we're gonna extend it for a period of time. So all of those projects come in
Who's
through.
making all the decisions on where all the money
Getting
goes?
there.
Yeah.
So the CRA board is the city commission. We also have a system of advisory boards, so each district has an advisory board that's appointed by the commission that reviews the applications, reviews the budgets, reviews the funding proposals, and then makes a recommendation to the CRA board, the city commission, to make the final decision on how those funds are dispersed and some of the parameters around the use and recovery of those funds.
So like the tenant, toots in the weeds, but it's the church, the tenants, both tenants or whoever got the grant, how did that person's communication get to the CRA board to get that funding? Because is there like lobbyists and friends, is it handshakes, like if I open a restaurant, how do I get 500 grand from ITI instead of coming from the landlord or
So
investor?
the CRA has programs that are established based off the redevelopment plans that are then marketed and advertised for folks to know that they can come to the CRA and avail themselves of those programs. So they come in, they ask for funding through those programs through a process. they're vetted to make sure they meet the requirements of the process before they're sent to the advisory board hears it, they make a recommendation to the CRA board.
And then secondarily, if I'm on the advisory board, like who would come up with the idea of say, we should just buy the church? And then that would go through the advisory board, then we go to the commissioner and they'd say, yeah, let's buy the church. Like,
Well,
instead of let's give the guy the money. No, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to figure out where all the decisions are being made.
Sure.
That's all, okay.
The other thing is, if we're gonna invest in an area that's up and coming, why are we gonna put a restaurant that charges $100 for a steak there? It just makes no sense.
catering to the area.
I think that's where you get to the point of the conversation of is our work done here? When we have these really, really nice
Right.
places going in to serve the community, cause the people are paying $3,000 in rent a block away, at least, you know, my neighbors are, and then like, well, maybe that's maybe that's becoming something different.
So, you know, these areas all develop differently, right?
Sure.
It's more than just the CRA district, it's several zoning districts. So obviously Flagler Village, what the city did with the zoning district in downtown worked really well, and we've seen a lot of good
No,
growth and
absolutely.
development
I
in
think that's
Flagler
important.
Village. You know, but you know, it's an entire area, so that
We're bringing in
development,
taxes,
right,
we're bringing in revenue.
right.
Well, my point of this whole thing is, we're investing, and there's a number of other ones in the list that you showed us. Eateries and pubs and restaurants, and if you build buildings and put people in them and clean up the area, business owners are gonna come in and open restaurants and open pubs and open eateries. We don't need to fund that. That's all.
So,
That was my question, and that's my,
But there's other
I don't
boards
know that I necessarily agree with
I
that.
may not, and you're slightly biased, it's okay, you're right, I understand.
I guess the real question is who defined that strategy and that
Right.
approach? Is it the city commission? They don't get into the weeds, do they?
Well, he said there's
Of
They
that.
do, so.
So the boards are advising about the strategy and
There's
the
a redevelopment plan, again, there was a
we don't have
redevelopment
it
plan when the
already.
district was established, it was amended in 2016. When we go through this process, if both commission, the city commission and county commission agree to enter in the ILA for the extension, we'll have to adopt an amended plan to plan for that next 10 years of what the funds will be spent on generally, broadly, right? Then those projects that come in are vetted based on that plan, the advisory board's recommendation, ultimately the city commission's. And I don't wanna you to forget, I don't think we got to it in the slide, but this is a request for a 10-year extension at 50% with a review by the commission every 2 years. So they've built in a process by
That's good.
which to analyze how it's working, is the funding the right amount, you know, is it going in the way that they expected it to go, so.
And very candidly, the budget advisory board has never been consulted as a cross district.
Well,
Actually, I
well,
would like to
yes, we did.
disagree with that.
Yes,
We
yes, we did.
yeah, so
Cause you've
this
given a presentation before last year and then you.
presented to you twice, and I think the intent was to hold off until after the goal
Yes.
setting. The commission weighed in at goal setting and kind of provided direction before that item
We
came
were
back
asked,
here again.
we were asked.
We were consulted.
We were.
Yeah, there was
We
presentation.
didn't provide
We
any
were asked
feedback.
It wasn't that detailed, it was whether or not, if Broward County decides to jump in or not, what are we gonna do? And
So it was a very specific action point.
It wasn't deep, this is the most specific, as I recall, asking questions like
Maybe
this.
we-
We did ask some questions, but
Do we have
Can I
any
ask a couple
update on,
questions?
excuse me, just a second, do we have any update on the proposed legislation? Is it dead this year or
It's
is it
dead.
totally dead? But the possibility of coming back next year.
They usually come back every year. Every year there's something.
And that was the state legislature wanted to do away with all CRAs.
correct.
They
I like that
feel-
2-year thing, at least we have some, you know, we didn't, for 30 years, it just ran.
Didn't mean to cut you off, but Melissa.
No, it's okay. So I'm just curious, because I'm familiar, I sat on the beach CRA for 6 years, so I'm very familiar with the CRA and how long it takes to get projects going, because some of them are just now coming to fruition, like 10 or 12 years later. I guess one of my, I'll say concerns, is that I believe, and maybe I'm reading these wrong, and I was gonna wait till the end after you were able to go through all the slides, but it looks like there's currently a little over $40 million in the fund that hasn't been spent. So you've dispersed 21, there's 44 remaining. Are those 25 projects that are out there? What's the cost of those 25 projects? Will it eat up that 44 million?
So
I'll just maybe, And in terms of affordable housing, I saw on one of the slides you had, I know you haven't gone through this, so it's not fair to ask about. But the affordable housing, how many units is that? You know, obviously I know Broward County is working on more affordable housing. How many units, how many of those are in the pipeline? More restaurants, I think I saw the next slide, I saw Green Mills on there, which I know is Metros and Steve, like, I get, so how many of those, how many units does that add up to? And, you know, and the hard part is when there's so much money currently sitting in that fund right now, right before it sunsets, and then how much of that are you anticipating to use? Why hasn't it been used? I
That's
guess
one
is
of my question, why was it not used?
It is, most of those projects have been, funding has been allocated to those projects. They're in some level of actual development, whether it's going through their entitlements, whether it's the plans are being done, or some of them are actually in the stage of construction. When you talk about the number of affordable units, take into consideration where we're talking about and understand the whole idea of CRAs. It's to redevelop an area that's been divested or, you know, there hasn't been much investment going on. So these areas are what, when Chris talks about the state and how you get a CRA, it's been determined to be slum and blighted, right? Slum and blighted, the boundaries are drawn in such a way where there's an area, we realize or we understand that there's going to be an area that'll be a transitioning area. And at some point in time, as that area grows and develops, you can then potentially use that increment to help to build up the area that's actually slum and blighted. And that's actually what is happening now. You talk about Flagler Village and what's happening there, and you think that, okay, we're done, we're finished. But really, the reason for it being a CRA is the other side, which really hasn't received a lot of the investment that needs to happen. Which is why we do look at bringing entertainment and all those other restaurants and things like that to create a sense of place. It's not that that side is not contributing to the TIF as well, because you have a lot of single family homes who pay taxes as well. But that area is slum and blighted, so it needs the investment that we are now utilizing and bringing housing, commercial development, everything. When Chris talked about we're limited in what we do, it's because it's what we put the money into is the physical buildings, not. Can't do socially benefiting programs. We don't do things that'll just go away. So we put money into the real estate. Regardless as to whether or not that business is successful or not, that owner is gonna pay the taxes. So that is an investment that will appreciate. So when we talk about affordable housing, this area has a significant amount of affordable housing. This is the area where you have most of the public housing that has been renovated and it's now low-income housing tax. The Housing Authority has over 1,000 units of affordable housing that they, that they transitioned from public housing to affordable housing. So while we do still want some affordable housing, but we're looking to kind of diversify and create a mix, not just all affordable, not just all low income, but a lot of these
I don't think affordable always means low income. I think
No,
it's
I'm saying-
workforce and I think attainable.
I get that.
Use whatever word you wanna use.
I get that, I understand the nomenclature of the word, and it's migrated in a lot of ways. So I'm talking about affordable, I'm talking about low income, and I'm talking about what was considered as public housing. You have a number of different housing types. So with our investments, all of the apartments that you see have some affordable within them. But
that isn't the total focus, because what we're trying to do is create an environment where we do have folks that that have disposable income, so that as we populate these areas, there can then be a demand for goods and services that we can then bring in jobs and, you know, the whole live, work environment.
No, I get it completely, and I think Pompano's probably done a great job of, you know, with their CRA, I was over there last night actually. But it's a hard pill to swallow, I think, for taxpayers, right? When there's still $40 million sitting in an account that hasn't been spent down in all these years. Well, I mean, I'm just looking at the numbers, that's all,
It's
and
allocated and
What
it's in the
percentage
process.
is allocated? Do we know that number?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you look at the chart on the right-hand side, it gives you a feel for, of that $44 million, what percentage of the project or the total allocation of the project has been spent. So I'll start at the top. So there's only $1 million left in 6 projects that are more than 75 or 65% complete. The next grouping would be 2.3 million of those projects that are between 75 and, I guess, between 75 and 76, so about complete. And then you look at the 50%, the biggest grouping is the 12 projects that have a larger balance, but it gives you a feel for what percentage of completion you're at for each of those level of projects.
That's, but what's clear is from those numbers is that 12 project, there's nothing that's been dispersed, correct? Am I reading it right?
Let me just talk about this a little bit. So,
Maybe I'm
affordable
misreading.
housing. So when I first came to the city 7 years ago, the very first thing that came up west of the tracks along Sistrunk was 613. It's a mixed income, mainly workforce is the affordable component, multifamily development, right? Since then, in the last 7 years, we've had a slew of new projects go through the DRC process and get approved. Not all of them have broken ground, and there's several reasons for that. I mean, obviously the economy, COVID, lots of things happened that kind of stalled, especially these developments that are on smaller margins than most of your high-end, you know, developments downtown on the beach and that sort of thing. So those 12 projects are projects, and they probably, and I can't tell you how many it's 12, but a lot of them have approved development permits that are waiting to go vertical. 2 of the biggest ones, one just recently came online, which is on the corner of 7th and Sistrunk, which is the Adderley. And then you have the Arcadian just across the street that'll come online. Phase 1 will come online probably in the next couple of months. Phase 2 will be a few months more out. So those projects are in the queue and approved to be built, but they haven't been built yet. And so we're seeing that transition from Flagler Village, where you're built out for the most part and land.
I mean, in
expensive,
development in general,
that
there's
is
a
going to the
delay,
west
right?
now,
But
right.
so I understand the concept you're saying. What I'm saying is there an amount of money that's not been allocated? Do we know what number that is? I understand what's in the pipeline.
Out of those 38 million.
That's what I'm trying to understand.
For the current year, there is though.
And that's, I'm just trying to get that number, that's all. Just it'll be very clear, because that's, I think, what people are looking at. They may be reading it wrong. I'm just happy to.
It's all allocated.
So the $44,549,695 is allocated.
Into projects.
There's no money that's not spent in the CRA.
Now there
I
is, but.
found 500,000. Can you tell us what happened to that pub?
You're talking about
McGuire's Pub?
McGuire's,
We gave them 500,000 and.
So it's not 40.
that is, again, that's a project that's going to be defunded,
Why?
because
happened?
they haven't moved forward. They haven't moved forward. I know there's some issues with investors, from my understanding. The owner had certain investors, and there's been a number of different.
So that's my concern right there. That's the concern, is who's doing the research here? We just gave a group of people $500,000 to go open a restaurant somewhere.
There's
we got lucky.
boards, there's boards, but it's risky in hospitality.
So
It is.
let me explain to you, the process. It's not that, someone got risky. We have an application process where we do vet. It is an underwriting process, much like a bank. When you come to us, it's like you're going to a bank. There's an application process. We ask for tax returns, we ask
Yeah,
for
I got it.
all of those things that when you go to a bank and you go through an underwriting process, it's much the same. we have to see accounts with funding in those accounts.
Yeah.
When we gave Molly McGuire, that grant, it was actually before COVID. So,
2019.
yeah, around that time. And for whatever reason, and there's some other reasons that I don't necessarily wanna mention
No
here.
problem.
That that particular development was stalled, and I'm sure if you know, he has a relationship with the city. And there were several things that,
Yep.
So.
I did notice that a lot of people have relationships with the city. One last.
May I just answer one question? So Yvette looked really quickly. So you asked, is there any current year money?
Mhm.
So Yvette indicated of the current, the 30, each year they get $30 million, like the $30 million this year. Of the current year, there's around 3 million and there's almost 6 million that's going to roll from last year. So $8 to $9 million is about what's available still to
Right,
be
'cause that's new.
appropriated in addition to the
It's-
projects that are.
New money.
That's
It's money you probably
Yeah.
haven't gotten yet.
That's an interesting number, 6 million, because I'm hearing there's gonna be a proposal to transfer $6 million for Carter Park.
That was pulled
was
from the
CRA
agenda, yeah.
It's been pulled.
That's the same
It
one.
was pulled from the agenda, but I don't know why. Is that totally off the table now?
So I can speak to that. So Raquel Williams, City Manager. So the 5.9 million that was on the agenda related to CRA funding potentially going to Carter Park was pulled from the agenda as we continue to explore and prioritize potential projects that either have not moved through the process or projects that have been contemplated that have not yet been allocated any resources via the CRA. So that is an ongoing discussion as to how that 5.9 million could and should be allocated. And so I anticipate that there will be an agenda item coming forward to discuss those resources.
Just have one follow, I promise I'm done. So I did read the statute, it's not that long, and it's not very specific as to the flexibility. So I'm assuming there's a city statute or a city addendum or a city something that we follow?
What Chris mentioned is our plan, you gotta understand when we go and we do what's called a finding of necessity, which is what kicks it all off. You go and you have to find that there is slum and blight.
Yep.
Once we do that, then the redevelopment plan basically is it's the plan and how you're going to get rid of those slum and blight conditions. So it's tailored specifically to our situation. And in the plan, all of those issues that we categorized and we looked at and we documented as slum and blighted situations, we put those in the plan. We do not, again, provide for any social services or anything like that. It's primarily real estate.
Could you
real
if you
estate.
wanted to? If you guys decided that we have to
No.
do that, you couldn't.
No.
Says who?
No, there is a policy that says we cannot do any socially benefiting programs.
Where's that policy?
It's in the plan.
Can we get that plan?
Yeah, it's in the plan, that we can't do any socially benefiting
So the reason why I keep hammering this, because on a couple of slides before, there was a line that quite bothered me. In case you guys didn't see that.
Which
We can go back to it
About
if
the
you like.
flexibility?
Yeah.
Yeah, and.
Can I tell you where the idea of flexibility came from? You gotta remember when they create the statute, statute 163, not every community is the same. So when they create that statute, it's generally interpreted, excuse me for that, generally interpreted so that you can apply it very specifically. But if you're creating a statute that's going to be for the whole of the state of Florida, then
Has to be
not
general.
it has to be
So
general.
when I
enough.
look at that sentence again, CRA rules limit flexibility of how and where the city can use the funds. What CRA rules limit the flexibility of how and where we can use the funds?
So can I just real quick,
Please.
the where,
all.
the where is a really important part of that because we have no
Districts.
flexibility to spend it except for
In
in that box, right?
How
So-
is what I'm looking at.
Okay, So the
Not
where,
where.
the where piece, that's
I
one of the
understand the where piece.
flexibility,
I
okay.
understand the where piece. It's the how piece I don't understand.
I think
That's
there's
what-
another current statutes too. There is very specific language.
It
Without
is.
looking at it
Yeah,
right now, I can
it's-
share it with you though.
Please.
Yeah.
But again,
Would you all like that on the board here?
it's
Specific language?
Specifically towards possibly the redirecting some of this money.
Just, I'm just worried about flexibility that you guys do have. And when we created this thing 30 years ago, there's no one at that table would have thought we had this much money 30 years later, or maybe I'm wrong. So that's why part of my question was, can we limit to a dollar amount instead of a percentage as the city grows? But I think you just told me that every 2 years the commission can look at it. So that's satisfying, I think.
And that's a perfect lead in too, that I want to ask about was, it was intended that, is it West Lauderdale? Was that the name of?
And that's what I'm doing, which is.
That was to take over when the CRA sunsetted. Even though it wasn't using tax dollars to fund it, it was off percentage of the revenue.
Can I, Invest Fort Lauderdale was never meant to take over for the CRA. It was always meant to augment what the CRA actually does.
That it was just, once the CRA sunsetted, to have a
It
system
could,
in place.
it could continue some of the work of the CRA. Invest Fort Lauderdale was created as a community development corporation, a 501c3. Anybody would tell you, if you were to suggest that Invest Fort Lauderdale would take over for the CRA has a dedicated funding source. It can't be the same. It can't do the same things that the CRA.
No, but that funding source could be, because they were a 501c3 under the intent that the city out of the budget of revenue could give some of that money, because it's a 501c3, we give to 501c3s.
Yeah,
That was the intent.
No, sir. Let me tell you the intent. I created it, so don't tell me.
Well,
You can't tell me what the intent
Commissioners
is.
have a different understanding of it.
No, I'm the one that created it, and I'll tell you what the intent was. The intent was to have a vehicle that could go and get funding from other organizations, from other foundations and all those other things. It would be to function exactly like a 501c3, which is a ground up organization. It's not, it wasn't created so the CRA can put money into it. That was not the intent.
Not the CRA, the city's operating budget, not CRA.
Not the
But once the CRA sunsetted, that $12 million that comes in, the city can allocate a portion of that to
Mr.
any
Brown.
non-for-profit they want.
Right, Mr. Brown, and it would be just like any other CDC or nonprofit. It would be the same as.
So
any
where are
other.
we at with Invest Fort Lauderdale?
We're in the process of reorganizing it because and trying to get our 501c3 designation. The IRS said we can't become a 501c3 because we were totally city appointed board. So we have to now reconstitute it and put more non-city appointments on the board.
So I'm assuming you're Desiree Smith?
Yeah, we met the other night.
Okay. I don't think the board, some of the board entire board's met you.
Hi, Desiree.
Hello, everybody. How are you?
Okay.
Just wondering, can we finish with the presentation? Because if, I'm thinking maybe some of these questions might be answered, but and that way
There's
we
a
can,
presentation, there'll be questions
and
after.
then we could, then maybe that might help address some of the questions that are being answered.
So as they ask questions, I kind of flip through the ones
Yes,
that
yeah.
answered it,
We
but
went
that's
through
the
it.
end of the slide.
Okay, so we're
Yeah.
good?
That's it, just to say, hey, this was the direction from the commission and what our path forward is.
What's our opinion on?
I mean, I will say I'm happy to hear, I'm sorry, I didn't.
Oh, it's
I'm
okay.
so sorry.
I did have a, thank you so much for that. Just a couple questions. I'm curious just because of the extension and, you know, the history, the 30-year history, about the strategic plan going forward. If it is extended, and this may just be something about the city's website, but the last 5-year strategic plan that I can find on the website is from 2013. is there a more recent strategic plan for the CRA?
So actually, we are in the process right now of doing an amended and restated redevelopment plan, which will take into account the current conditions and where we're looking to go. So anytime that you're looking to extend, it requires that you do an amended and restated plan.
It's a 2016 amended plan, and then like Clarence said, once if the city and the county approve the ILA for the extension, we'll have to have a new plan adopted and approved by Broward County by the time of
Okay,
the,
so but.
the expiration date leading into the new 10-year period.
Gotcha, okay, but technically as a strategic plan, was the last formal strategic plan signed off on, was it the 2013 one?
There was again, an amended and restated plan.
So, okay.
2016.
26, so that's just not on the city website?
It should be.
Yeah, I guess this for just the public, this is the 2013 is what you're directed to. Just something interesting in that, so it's from 2013, so it's 12 years ago, but it did mention about 50 developable residential and commercial sites that the city owns. These are city-owned properties. And so I think that they're vacant residential, and it's recommended that the city and CRA aggressively dispose of properties. They can be immediately utilized to facilitate homeownership opportunities, private investment, et cetera. I'm just curious, 12 years later, I guess, where are we at with those 50 properties?
Over 35 of them have already been built, single-family infill housing.
Okay, cause that's obviously now the topic is, very important, affordable housing, and so just very interested in that area that the CRA can address.
Some of the remaining have some challenges with
Challenges,
development,
okay.
so they're the more harder to develop ones, so that's why they've lagged behind.
And then I guess just with and I mean, maybe this is more a question for commission, but with their intention to extend for another 10 years, but without their partners, the partners deciding not to, so obviously Broward County, why Broward, I mean, is there any kind of idea, if we feel that strongly about the CRA to continue funding for the next 10 years at 50%, has there been interest in trying to persuade Broward County to continue some aspect of funding? I mean, I understand that it's
They've done this with other extensions in other places, that
Okay.
they've left the cities to be the sole funder on an extension period. We did ask them if they would redirect the CRA funds that they would have provided to the district, but they'll now have back into their general fund, back into the district for affordable housing, and they declined that offer, so, they're agreeable.
because that is a focus of theirs right now is affordable
Right.
housing.
So they wanted to have the flexibility
not
to be able to
yeah.
use that
Yeah.
funding where they wanted to use the funding. But we still continue to encourage their
Right.
use of that funds in our city.
Okay.
But in all fairness, I will say this, they have contributed to projects in the CRA from their affordable housing fund
Gotcha.
that they have not returned to other municipalities when they've sunsetted. So we have, I would say at least 4 that I know of, where they have contributed to $5 million for the Adderley, they've $5 million for the Jones Project, 160 units that's going to be built. I mean, the Arcadian.
So they're choosing what they want to.
Right.
So why can't we do the same thing as a city?
Well, they have.
Do you
more-
need a CRA? I mean, do you need
Yes.
it?
Yes.
Why can't the city just say, well, we're just gonna take money and build stuff?
And
There are some advantages to having a
Like?
CRA. Because, right,
So it's focused, so again, you go back to the initiation of the district and the reason behind it, that you need development to remove, blighted conditions, so, I think as you all know, when you have more of a general fund resource, there's much more discretion on how those funds get spent.
Sure.
With the CRA, you're focused on an area that you've determined needs to be improved, and those funds are dedicated to that area, there's less discretion in those funds being used for other priorities.
so can we revisit Fort Lauderdale? And I don't want to get into what's your interpretation, what certain commissioners think was the intent of, but let's focus in more on what are going to be the benchmarks to get this thing up and running and get it, because it's been on, what, how many years now?
About 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, and we've been meeting, there's a board for it that has been meeting. Again, the delay really is in getting our 501c3. Once that happens, again, we'll staff it. And that staff will begin to start looking for funding to be able to augment what, if anything, they get from the CRA just in order to get going.
So who has to file the 501c3?
We're doing that.
Okay, so it's held up on in your
So
shop.
there's decisions that need to be made on the structure as it relates to the 501c3, especially the governing structure, the board structure of that group. And that's something that the commission's gonna have to weigh in on as a policy direction on how we structure that, because there's some limitations on the involvement of the municipal government on a board of a 501c3 as the governance structure is concerned. So that's what Clarence is talking about, he's working on establishing it, is working through some of the.
So when do you anticipate bringing that before the commission?
Actually, May 20th.
May 20th? Okay, good. Because, but I'm getting, my district commissioner's asking a lot of questions. You know, I'm sure some of the other district commissioners, certain ones are asking and, and I think that's good because, once you get that established and there's some opportunities there.
Yeah, I think so.
And if the legislation next year passes, the extension might be grandfathered in, it might not be. Depends on how they write the legislation. Pompano Beach is encouraging them, by the way, to do away with CRAs. There was an article in Sun Sentinel, and they have been a successful CRA.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any more questions? So I think we as a board have to, based on the workshop, they're wanting some input, That was my interpretation. So we'll have to think about some recommendations and maybe discuss it at our regular meeting on the 21st.
It would be the day after they talk about it. Or the day after it's on their agenda, right?
Well, next week.
Yeah,
We
we can notice it for a
Make it
regular.
up. Okay,
We can notice it as a regular meeting if they want to vote on something. Right?
or, if we want to vote on anything to make recommendations.
And then before then, we're gonna get the information I requested.
I can get with let me double check with the clerk's office about that, but I think as long as we notice it,
As long as we do.
yeah, I'll make sure.
Thank you, Clarence.
Clarence, you came under fire, buddy, thank you.
It's okay, anytime you're dealing with money.
You're not even sweating.
Not at all. I appreciate it,
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for the good order?
Thanks, sir.
Bedtime.
Solid? Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I was even thinking January, but maybe there was some, I mean, I.
8 or 9 months.
Because
I'm going through, I'm in January.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Look at some emails tomorrow and maybe see, cause I'm not, I was talking to